What do I say got it here? Yeah, okay. Good morning, everybody. It's morning in Montana. My name is Luann, and I'm an alcoholic. And Glenn, you have me crying to start already. My sobriety date is September 29th, 1989. I have a sponsor. I sponsor. I have a home group in Big Sky, Montana. I also have a Zoom home group. Now, I know I can only vote in one meeting, but the beauty for me of COVID is I've been reunited with people from all over the country, and it's just been amazing, as has my journey in sobriety. So I never prepare anything ahead of time. I never know what's going to come out of my mouth. And I was told to put a coin in my hand when I speak. It says, "In God we trust," and I'm supposed to trust. Now, that's not an easy ticket for this gal. I didn't come from a place where trust was in my vocabulary. And as I share my story, the fact that I'm going to say I love God is a miracle. And you're looking at a miracle when you're looking at me. Actually, I'm getting a text. Somebody's trying to get on, Glenn. So I don't know. There we go. It's gone. So I'm from New York. I'm one of 8 kids. I'm from a place they call Cirrhosis by the Sea. It's Long Beach, New York. And it was hell. And if I was given the choice to live my life over again, and I had to live my youth again, I would say, no, thanks. This go around has been enough. I didn't come from a beautiful place. I don't know when my first drink was. And I can share from my childhood a few memories that I have. And then we tell what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now. So in my childhood, I know I drank before age 10, but I know at age 10, my father worked for the airlines. I was able to fly independently alone to my grandmother's, Grandma Edna, who I love to this day. And my grandmother, like everybody else in my life, shared with me their solution. At 10 years old, I was given a bottle of Asti Spumante every day. Booze was one of my grandmother's solution. Now, I wish I could say that was my first time I drank, but it certainly wasn't. I was raised Catholic in a Catholic family, and I love being Catholic today. I left the church early in my life. I had a bad experience. I had a choir director who liked to get little girls drunk and do things that shouldn't be done to little girls. So I left the church. Now, drinking was the solution of my family. That's just what we did. We also did other things. This is an AA meeting, so I won't talk about those other things. But the person who's responsible for bringing me into this meeting, Uncle Billy, who Glenn knows and some other people might know. Actually, yeah, you know Uncle Billy too. So he's my uncle. He came from that same family system. And Uncle Billy shared his solution with me also. And what happened early in my youth, and I was in grammar school, and my uncle belonged in this program robustly. And I know one time he was brought over to babysit me, and I was an out of control kid, and he gave me substances that completely almost paralyzed me. And I'm not kidding. I remember being on the couch as a kid thinking, well, this would be a peaceful way to die. I could not move an extremity. Whatever he gave me was really good. He never had trouble with me. So when I started getting completely out of control, my mother suggested that I talk with Uncle Billy. I shared with Uncle Billy what was going on in my life. And he said, I don't blame you. And he gave me more of what he had, which at that time wasn't such a good thing. I was an out of control kid. I was given a crying angel, which might sound so stupid, but it was significant to me in my life. I was in first grade, and my first grade teacher, her name was Sister Phyllis. She gave me this crying angel, and this crying angel was given to me because I was so rotten. All the angels in heaven were crying, right? And after she gave me that angel, she came over to my house that afternoon and said to my mother, "Did you tell your mother what you got today?" And I'm like, I just got home. In my head, I'm a little kid. I'm like, of course I didn't show her yet. You got here before I did. You drove, I walked. So anyway, I didn't come from a nice place. I was kicked out of things. I was a mess. So my mother doesn't know what to do with me. And she sends me to my uncle because he doesn't seem to have problems with me. Well, the reason he didn't have problems with me is he was medicating me. Okay. So he medicated me more. what happened is I was in absolute misery, complete misery. I hated my life. If I could have committed suicide, I would have. I just hated it. My dad said to me, Luann, an education will set you free. So I thought, okay, that's my solution. I'm going to get an education. I'm going to get the hell out of here. So miraculously, and this is all God, I was able to get an education, and I got to go to Boston University, and Nora's on the line. Her sister Beatrice was my roommate. I met her my very first day of school. Now, poor Beatrice never smoked, never did drugs, never drank, never had sex, and she ran into me. Bummer for Beatrice, right? Although not really. We had the most beautiful, beautiful friendship our whole lives. Now, Beatrice was my best friend. And to this moment, I love Beatrice. And I'll share one experience why she was my best friend and how I chose my best friends at that time. And they love me anyway, despite who I am. When I was in college, we had this one experience, and Nora, seeing you makes me think of it. Beatrice and I like to go out, put on the war paint and raid the village. We like to go out and party. And there was this one nightclub we used to go to. And I shared this story at my group here in Montana on Monday. So I don't know why it's current in my mind. There was this guy who was at the club all the time. Beatrice and I called him Charmin Darmin. He was from Ethiopia, and he was trying to charm me. And so we teased him and called him Charmin Darmin. And men, I'm sorry, I have been a complete jerk to you for most of my life. And that Charmin Darmin was no exception. Beatrice and I thought he danced like a sperm, right? I had no interest in Charmin Darmin, none. This is my college experience. This is how I drank. I wake up. It wasn't in the morning. It was at like 10 o'clock at night or something like this. Horizontal, face to face with Charmin Darmin. Thank God I was still clothed at this time. And I come to, from a blackout, and I look at him. I go, what are you doing here? He said, you invited me. When did I invite you? He's like, an hour ago. I said, are you kidding me? How did I end up with Charmin Darmin in my room, horizontal? So I kick him out. And how confusing that must have been for him, right? Today I can look at what have I done to other people? This poor guy has working on me for months. He finally gets to me and I kick him out like a lunatic. I mean, that's not nice. I wasn't nice. So here's why Beatrice stayed one of my great friends. I call her up. I'm like, B, you're not going to believe this. I was just horizontal with Charmin Darmin. And she goes, oh my God, did you come too dressed? Because this was not an unusual experience when Beatrice and I actually lived together. It was we used to have a sport, and I'm not kidding you. Whoever came to first in the morning, we'd look around the room because we had a triple, and we'd see if there were any extra bodies laying around. And if there were, we would actually sit around in a circle and watch whoever that poor slob guy was that made it into our room. We'd watch him wake up, and we'd all be, we were horrible. Anyway, I called Beatrice and I'm like, oh no, Charmin Darmin is, I just kicked him out. And she, you know what she said to me? And this was so beautiful. She said, Lou, what did you drink tonight? I said, I'm not sure. I think it was the tequila. She said, yep, you got to stop the tequila. Beatrice didn't tell me to stop drinking. She told me to switch. What a beautiful friend, right? So that pretty much summarizes my youth. I was a blackout drunk. I thought an education would set me free. What an education did was allow me to drink in nicer places and still black out, not in such nice places. I graduated from college. I went to New York, got a great job, had problems in New York, shocker, big shocker. So I thought if I went to Portland, Oregon with this guy, all would be well. Well, that's not what happened. I had a great job, great guy. I'm still a blackout drunk. I'm still a blackout drunk. And here's what happened. My last year of college, my Uncle Billy gets into recovery, right? So here's my main supplier, right? Sober. And he's also given up everything else. And I'm calling him up because I need some solution, right? And his solution has changed. He is not drinking. He's not drugging. And his solution, he found in AA. I'm like, what? You're going to AA? What do you do at AA, right? He said, well, we work these steps, Lou. And if you work these steps, you'll have a personality change. I said, well, I like my personality, right? I don't need to change my personality. He said, Lou, you're having a lot of pain in your life, right? Something's got to change. You might want to give it a try. But he didn't actually suggest I try AA. He was very smart. He said, you know, I'm an alcoholic. You belong in Al-Anon. So why don't you check out Al-Anon? And with enough pain. I mean, I used to call him crying all the time. Glenn, you know how many times I've called you crying? I called Uncle Billy on steroids crying. I don't know how you guys don't hang up on me. He suggested I go to Al-Anon. I go to Al-Anon. I get a sponsor. And how did I choose my sponsor? And I only got a sponsor to shut Uncle Billy up. Did you get a sponsor yet? No. Did you get a sponsor yet? No. Did you get a sponsor yet? No. For the love of God, I'm just going to get a sponsor. And he said, you pick somebody who you like what they have. Now, Tina's on this meeting. I saw her a few minutes ago. I asked this woman, Jackie Churchak, to be my sponsor because when she smiled, her gums showed. She smiled and her gums showed, right? That's how you pick a sponsor? Yep, that's how I pick my sponsor. Now, why did I pick her? Because when I was a kid, my mother didn't like my smile because when I smile, my gums showed. And Jackie smiled, her gums showed, and she didn't care. So I wanted what Jackie had. Now, lucky me, Jackie was very strong in our program, very strong. And unlike Uncle Billy, who tried to shove this book down my throat, right? Jackie did not try to shove the book down my throat. Jackie basically lived through the steps with me. And it was just beautiful. I did not believe in God. You know, in our literature, it says, the solution is God. May you find him now. I'm like, oh, I'm not so sure if this is going to work. So by the way, our literature is the same in AA and Al-Anon. And in Al-Anon, by the way, I asked Jackie to be my sponsor and she says to me, which program? And I say, which program? Al-Anon, of course. And she said, okay, we'll see, right? And she had cancer and she's dying of cancer. And she says, I don't have any time for your nonsense. So we're going to get started right away. She didn't have me read a thing in the book. She said, you've got a problem. You know, you like to control other people. Understatement. Right? And you're miserable. And now step 2 in Al-Anon is the same step in our program. She said, you need to have a power greater than yourself to restore you to sanity because you seem a little bit nuts. Right? And I said, well, that's a problem because I'm not a God girl. And if that's the solution here, there's no solution for me. She said, it says higher power. You can start with the higher power. And I said, oh, really? And I heard somebody say something about a doorknob. I said, okay, it's the doorknob. So the doorknob became my higher power, which was such a joke. And she told me, she was so amazingly patient. She said, your job is to seek, right? So you can grow. So she took me to all sorts of places for me to find God. She took me to a Buddhist temple. She sent me to an Indian drumming ceremony. I was christened Little Owl, which is for little wisdom. She took me all over the place on a spiritual search. And what a beautiful thing to do. And I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, I can do this higher power thing. There is something bigger and better and badder than me out there, you know? And she basically said, Lou, there is a God, you're not it. And we're just going to move on because I'm dying of cancer here. We're not going to waste any more time. So we do the 3rd step and I turn my will, my thoughts and my life, my actions over to the care of something that's bigger and badder than me. And she said, now it's time for your step 4. Okay. She says, and this is Al-Anon, by the way, and this is not in our literature. She said, I'm dying, you know. I said, yeah, I know you are. And she said, so I don't have any time for nonsense. This is a searching and fearless moral inventory. So to get you fearless, I want you to write down 5 things that you would rather die than tell anybody. So I say, sure, not right away, but I eventually do because every time I don't do what she said, she would hang up on me. I'd call her up and she used to tell me I had to get on my knees every morning and say, please, and on my knees every night and say, thank you. And first I did it to the doorknob and then I did it to the Buddha thing. And then I did it to the great owl. And, you know, I did this like to so many different things. She said, it didn't matter as long as I got on my knees in the morning and I got on my knees at night. I said, please in the morning. Right. And I didn't have to say anything else. In fact, she told me not to. She said, God knows what you need. You don't need to fill in the blank. And I say thank you every night on my knees because God knows what you need and he gave it to you. So say thank you. And I would call her. She had me call her every day. And if I called her and she said, did you get on your knees? And I'd say, no, she would hang up. Did you get on your knees? Hang up. So now she gives me my assignment to write down the 5 things that you'd rather die than tell anybody. Did you write it down? Nope. Hang up. Did you write it down? Nope. Hang up. Torture. So finally I write down the 5 things. I share them with her and she suggested I try AA. That was a bummer. I did not want to be in the same room as my uncle and all of you people, right? And here I am so happily and so grateful for this journey. I didn't grow to love art literature on purpose. I, in my early sobriety, got engaged to be married to this man, which I didn't marry him, but I canceled the wedding 3 weeks before the wedding. Now, my uncle had been asking me to go to these Joe and Charlie seminars for my first and second year of sobriety. And I said, no, no, no. Well, now I was supposed to get married this weekend and I canceled the wedding and I needed an out, right? I needed a safe place to go. So this happened to be a 12 and 12 study with Willie B. and John W. and Clancy. And Uncle Billy said, I'm going to this thing. And it's not the big book. Don't worry. You're not going to have to read the big book. It's the 12 and 12. I said, great, I'm coming. So I got to go away for the weekend to avoid all of the repercussions of my last minute canceled wedding. And that's where I met Willie B. And that's where I got first turned on to our literature through the 12 and 12. And after going to that very first 12 and 12 study, the very next year, I went to Joe and Charlie's Big Book study where I met Glenn and a few other people that have literally saved my life. Charlie used to say, God works through people, for people. And I can tell you that's 100% true. I ran into Billy from Philly 2 weeks ago in Florida. And he said, he put me in like a headlock, almost like he was going to give me a nuggie because he knew me since I was a kid too. And he said, we helped to raise you. And the answer is, yes, you did help to raise me. When I came in here, I was a very broken woman. And I'm not today. I today believe I'm a child of God. And I have a right to be here just like all of you do. And I believe I'm loved today, which is a miracle. So that I can say the word God. You know where I came from. I had left the church, right? Joe and Charlie brought the big book, alive to me. And I love it. Glenn, you've said to me it's a living, working document, a living, breathing document, and it meets you where you are. It absolutely meets you where you are. Every single time I read it, it says something different to me. And 3 weeks ago, I was asked to join a meeting out of Portland, Oregon. This gentleman, Eric, was celebrating 33 years. And I was at his AA anniversary 33 years ago. And I was a newcomer. And I was sitting in the back of the room. I have 32 years. He has 33. And I was angry because Jackie had sent me from Al-Anon into AA. And here's this guy, this big, gigantic guy. And he was celebrating in a year. And by the way, happy anniversary to all our beautiful celebrants. And Eric is up in the front of the room and he had been sober for a whole year. And I thought, that guy's so full of it. He is lying. He's like, there's no way you can be in the front of a room smiling if you haven't had a drink in a whole year. Well, Eric called me and asked me to join his meeting. And he had me read this. Listen to this. This is in the 3rd edition of the Big Book. And I happen to have it. I don't even know if it's in the 4th edition. It's in the story section. This is crazy. Look at what our literature says. And this is me today. For I am happy. I thought I could never be happy. A happy man is not likely to do harm to another human being. Harm is done by sick people, as I was sick, and doing dreadful harm to myself and to my loved ones. For me, AA is the synthesis of all the philosophy I've ever read, all the positive, good philosophy, all of it based on love. I've seen there's only one law, the law of love, and there are only 2 sins. The first is to interfere with the growth of another human being, and the second is to interfere with one's own growth. How beautiful is that? Listen to what else it says. It says, he who loses his life does indeed find it. The more you give, the more you get. The less you think of yourself, the more of a person you become. And this means so much to me because this is me today. In AA, we can begin again, no matter how late it may be. I have begun again. The author of this story says at 54, I'm 56. At 56, I have had come true for me the old wish. If only I could live my life over knowing what I know. That's what I'm doing again. Living again, knowing what I know. Okay. AA has raised me. And the things that I haven't been at peace with in my past, I have peace with. I cannot believe it. I even have peace with God. And how did that come about? You know, I've worked this program for years out of the book with a sponsor. And when Joe and Charlie passed, these two new guys came, Pat and Brian, next gen people. And Pat's, I think I heard him the second year he did it. Pat from the podium would say during one of the sessions, go back to the religion of your childhood and find an adult reason to leave it, right? So the very first time I hear Pat, I go up to him. I think I know so much, right? Because I've been around a little longer than him. And I said, Pat, you're doing a great job. I got a little advice for you. I have a suggestion. You don't need to say that from the podium. That does not belong coming out of the podium. And he's like, ha, 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 okay. Next year I go back. He says the same thing. Go back to the religion of your childhood, find an adult reason to leave it. I go up to him again. I said, Pat, I threw up in my mouth when you said that this year. I really don't think you need to say that from the podium. I go back the next year. He says it again. I say, Pat, I'm going to throw up on the table. There's going to be a spectacle if you say that again. Right now, I leave that seminar and I am not at peace. And that was 8 years ago. So you can continue to grow in your sobriety. There's a message there. You can continue to grow no matter how long you've been around. I leave that seminar and I go directly to my brother's 50th surprise birthday. And at that birthday party is the nun who gave me my crying angel, right? Who told me I was so rotten that all the angels in heaven were crying. Sister Phyllis, who I called Syphilis. And I got to sit down with her as an adult. And I said, Sister Phyllis, I didn't call her syphilis to her face. I said, now, by the way, Sister Phyllis, I was a public drunk, and there's nothing worse than a drunken young woman waking up under the boardwalk. And I mean, I was a spectacle. I was such a spectacle. And the convent was right near the beach, and I used to drink on the beach. And anyway, I was found in a number of places. Sister Phyllis used to pray for me annually at her retreat. And she would write me a letter about how she's praying for me, right? She prayed for me. This nun prayed for me for years, like probably for a decade. And I don't know what happened. She stopped praying for me. I don't know. Maybe she still prays for me. Anyway, I run into her as an adult. And I said, Sister Phyllis, thank you for your prayers. They worked. I'm sober. And I've been sober for a couple of decades now. So really, truly, thank you. My life is good. I said, but I've got a problem. I said, I have no peace with God. I'm so lost. I'm struggling mightily. What the hell did you teach me, right? And this beautiful nun said to me, she said, Lou, we made a terrible mistake with your generation. We taught you rules. We didn't teach you relationship. What a gift. She didn't tell me I was rotten like she did when I was a kid. She said, I was a young nun. I loved Jesus. And I didn't know that, you know, the church is made up of people and people are fallible, right? And there were a lot of mistakes that were made in your life, and she's aware of them. She said, so you do much like, exactly like you all tell me, you know, whatever I'm not at peace with owns me, right? And to push through, and I'll eventually get to peace. And she suggested I started reading the big, big book, right? Now, I heard the term big, big book. She didn't use that word. I heard the term big, big book at the seminars from Joe, our first Joe. And I thought he meant the large print book because he was so old, right? So he would tell us stories out of what I thought was the large print big book, which was actually the big, big book, the Bible. I had no idea. I had no idea. So now I'm challenged to read the Bible. And I'm like, oh, mercy, mercy. I don't think I can do this. That is too, I had some really difficult experiences in the church. I don't know that I can go back there. Anyway, I have. Why? Because you all have loved me enough and encouraged me enough that I'm worth peace. And whatever I'm not at peace with owns me. Today I'm at peace. And today I'm happy. I go to mass. Amazingly, what happened a couple of weeks ago, I mean, there were a few things that have happened, is I was in Florida and I see Pat Rogan, who is the one who said, go back to the religion of your childhood and find an adult reason to leave it. Now, Glenn, I didn't tell you this. So I go to this gratitude dinner and there was this amazing speaker, Peter M. I mean, he was a rock star. And I spoke to him briefly afterwards. And then he ran into Pat Rogan later that night. And I had asked Peter to speak for this meeting coming up in January. And Peter said to Pat, hey, this girl Luann from Montana just asked me to speak. And Pat said, Luann Tammany? And he said, yeah. Pat called me up and he said, Luann, Peter's the guy who told me to go back to the religion of my childhood and find an adult reason to leave it. I'm like, you're kidding me. It's just too small of a world. And I do want to share, there was another miracle. I mean, you call them itty bitty miracles, IBMs, Glenn. I've had major miracles that have happened for me, even in the past couple of weeks. So Brian is on the screen. I see you in your little box there. I did a speaker meeting in Florida, I don't know what, 2 weeks ago. And I never know what I'm going to share. Every single meeting I went to in Florida, and I think I spoke 3 or 4 times over a 2-week period, which is odd. Every single meeting, somebody said, I know your uncle. Or they said, I know Mickey Diamond, who is another New York AA guy, right? I ended up going out to dinner with Mary Jane, a New York girl, this guy Frankie, and Brian. I'd never met Brian ever in my life. During our dinner conversation, somehow it comes up that his sponsor is this guy named Duff. Okay, Duff was my Uncle Billy's sponsor, right? Now, when you get sober, it doesn't mean like life is just going to be yippity skippy, like I'm going to float. You still get life. And I can tell you, I've loved my sobriety, but I've had some really difficult challenges in sobriety. I was married for a couple of decades, got married in sobriety, and learned that my spouse had a separate life with lots of other women for the entire duration of our marriage. And we're not married anymore. And that's the only time in my sobriety I ever really, really wanted to drink, because I was in so much pain. And I shared that with my groups, and, thank you, God, I didn't have to drink through it. But when I found out that my ex had this second life, I made 3 phone calls. I called Bahia, my sponsor. I called Tommy Mannion, who my uncle's dead. I called Tommy Mannion. That's a guy that my uncle sponsored. The other person I called was Duff, my uncle's sponsor, right? Because I met Duff at my grandfather's funeral before I was sober. So Duff has known me a long time. He knew me as a drunken little snot-nosed kid. And I was lost. And I had no men in my life that I could trust, right? None, other than in this program, right? So after Brian and I saw each other, I called Duff. And well, actually, Duff texted me. He called me. I finally called him back. And I cried. He cried. It's so beautiful. I said, Duff, what does all this mean? What does all this mean? And he said, it means you're loved, right? It means you're loved. And if you're loved, that means, if I'm loved, that means all of you are loved. And Glenn, you've always, always been one of my guys that I can just trust to tell me the truth. And in this program, I have men in my life that I can trust and will tell me the truth. And that I can say that is a miracle, because that's not where I came from. It's just the most amazing blessing, amazing blessing. So I'm going to stop there and just tell you, I'm going to actually finish with this. This is still from that same story. And I never read the stories, by the way. So that Eric asked me to read the stories. I'm like, wow, maybe I need to visit those again. Okay. This is how the guy ends his little story here. I hope I've been able to impart to you at least a bit of what I know, the joy of living, the irresistible power of divine love and its healing strength, and the fact that we, as sentient beings, have the knowledge to choose between good and evil, and choosing good, we are made happy. The best choice I ever made in my life, ever, was walking into the rooms of AA. And for that, I'm grateful. And I will pass. Thank you.